Martin Oduor-Otieno, pleasure to have you here on the back seat.
Thank you, Sunny.
Martin, I wanted to start with, some years back you released your biography of your life. And in that, there was a phrase that leaped out at me, that when you become a leader, you should leave your ego at the door. What did you mean by that?
When I put that phrase in the book, Sunny, it was really a reflection of some of what I've seen in leadership, where people, once they become leaders, begin to really almost run roughshod over people, over other people. They think they are a small god unto themselves, and so on. And the point that I was making is that behaving that way and being so egotistic alienates people from you, and especially the people that you work with.
Yes.
Leadership is, I guess, it's just another role that people play. It doesn't make you
A different person.
A different person.
You know, it made total sense to me. But when I look around the landscape, corporate landscape, it's almost counterintuitive that you can be humble and leave your ego at the door, because a lot of the corporate titans you see in the world are almost larger than life figures. They revel in being very forceful and very dynamic and very, there's a distance between you and me if you're my follower. And you seem to not subscribe to that theory at all.
As I grew up, I went through the old leadership styles that you described. And that was exactly what it was. I mean, you had to scream at people, you had to put them down, you had to show them their place and so on. But as generations come and go, you obviously see that doesn't work anymore. And what I also find is that these days, people move across jobs very, very frequently.
Yes.
You only need to scream once and you don't have the guy anymore.
Yes.
And yet you've got, these are people that you train, these are people that you spend a lot of money on. These are highly intelligent people at the same time.
Martin, with all your achievements though, that is what's interesting. You have been CEO of a leading bank, you have had major positions in the banking industry, you've sat on many boards, you've had senior roles in the government. Despite all that, you retain this humble personality. What makes you different? Because most people in your position are pretty, arrogant about it.
The same way I relate with my family, the same way I relate with my friends, the same way that I come into leadership.
It's the same Martin.
It's the same Martin. It doesn't change, and I haven't had reason to change. I haven't seen why I should change that. I still earn the respect. I get colleagues and team members to play their part in terms of performing the roles they do. And I don't have to behave differently. Now, I guess everybody comes at leadership from a different perspective, putting all these things together. And maybe some of them feel that they've got to kind of scream at people and to behave differently for people to actually do what they're supposed to do.
But that's never been you.
No, but that hasn't been me, and I don't think that I've been any lesser leader.
One of the things I sense other leaders fear is that if they look too down to earth and too approachable, people don't fear them, and you are then perceived as weak, and you'll be taken advantage of. Has that been your experience?
No, that hasn't been my experience, and as long as one lays out the rules of the game, as it were, we are here for a purpose. We're here to achieve this, and as long as one is then able to rally and align the objectives of the teams to the objectives of the organization and of himself, then I find that you don't have to then create this culture of fear in people for them to necessarily do what they should be doing. that it almost comes natural. There will obviously be, some of the odd people in organizations who need to be treated separately, but there are systems and there are ways of dealing with errant people within organizations. And it doesn't have to be the leader screaming or shouting at people.
And do you feel that this is something you would recommend to people out there, that be true to that persona you have rather than inventing a new type of role for yourself as a leader?
I think so. I think leaders need to be authentic. They need to be themselves. If you try to be somebody else, I think you lose the game. At some point, it catches up with you.
The other issue I find around the more authoritarian styles of leadership is, in an era now where there's so much disruption going on from technology and from demographics and changing consumer behavior, if you're going to innovate, innovation doesn't come from lines of authority and tight discipline. It comes from free-ranging spirits and expansive thoughts.
Yes.
So your style of leadership, it seems to me, cultivates that way better than one where it's very known what your level of authority is, etc., and what you're allowed to say and not say.
Yeah.
But this thing of we're all in it together and we are inspiring ourselves to a better future is a different way. Have you found that?
I have, actually, and I have, across the different roles that I've held or played. These days, the last sort of 10 years or so, I've worked a lot with much younger people than myself. Mm-hmm. And they're people full of ideas, very vibrant, sort of structures and very tight frameworks don't go well with them. Mm-hmm. And yet you want to get all this energy and this vibe going, and therefore, having sort of open door policies, having guys walking in, sitting down, expressing themselves, meeting them on corridors and having conversations there. I just find that this flexibility in leadership is something that is very much part of life today, the life of a leader.
And yet if you were aloof or distant or putting them down frequently, those connections would not happen.
Exactly. Yeah, those connections just don't exist in that world. They keep you at bay. They don't say anything as a consequence.
I have your book here, Beyond the Shadows of My Dream. And this threads through the whole book, doesn't it? This persona of yours, that you are actually that rare creature, the humble leader. You seem to have brought it through in all aspects of your life. But it's a life you can look back on with some pride and
absolutely
fulfillment.
Absolutely. But I mean, it may be, Sunny, that some of those other behaviors in leaders also work.
I think within reason they do.
Yeah.
As long as you understand where to draw the line. So sometimes forceful behavior, much as it tends to burn people, it gets things done in a short space of time. The problem is in the long term.
Yes.
I think negative character traits in leadership can create short-term results, but in the long run, if you haven't connected with people, if they haven't felt inspired by you, if they're not enthusiastically behind you, it falls apart eventually.
Yeah.
And I always say to leaders, you may find that that pushiness will help you quarter by quarter, but it's not for the next 10 or 20 years that you create something beyond yourself.
Right.
And that's why I'm happy to see someone who has exemplified it, that you can achieve great things, but you don't have to become this rock star, over-forceful leader who does it at anybody else's expense.
Yeah, and that is important because my experience is that, people like being treated with respect. They like being recognized as capable individuals. And anything that you then do which kind of tries to demean that or diminish that in a sense is something that is going to be resisted.
So I think it creates a lot of unseen cracks.
But I think the other thing for leaders is that for them to really adopt this approach, they've got to recognize the fact that some people will think of them as weaklings or as weak leaders. Yeah. And they've got to make sure that at the end of the day, the objective is still being achieved. because that is the only thing that distinguishes, leaders
Indeed.
who perform.
If the results are happening.
Exactly, the results must be seen at the end of the day.
And I think you have to be strong in yourself.
Yeah.
No matter what people think of you,
Yeah.
you know what you stand for and why you do it, and eventually that shines through. Well, Martin Oduor-Otieno, it's been great to have you here as a gentleman leader. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sunny. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Martin Oduor-Otieno exemplified the softer and more refined skills of leadership long before they became fashionable. Martin is definitely that rare animal, the humble leader. Despite having worked at the highest levels of the private and public sectors, he stays grounded and self-effacing. In high-profile business gatherings, I have observed him equally at ease conversing with waiters and attendants as with his peer CEOs. Even those he has opposed will acknowledge his gentlemanly manner and his unfailing courtesy. Leadership is getting the best out of others, and these days, that is not best done by shouting at them. Big ego leadership looks increasingly outmoded in a world that demands a deeper influence and that rewards innovation and collaboration. See you next time on The Backseat.